is the day that we make changes for our children and our communities, and what we can do best for our families and our communities. There has been so much that we have gone through all these years from our grandparents and our parents, and that they had gone through because of what we want to make changes today. I want to acknowledge our past leadership when they first started Keewatin Tribal Council. The start of the Keewatin Tribal Council was because of us now, our children and our grandchildren, and that we continue with what they had started. It was for the best that they wanted for us, and that we start now a new day in what we can do for our children.
Now, today we begin the bridge of strength of the past for the best interest of our children. What does that mean to you, the best interest of our children? And today we stand in front of the province and no longer allow them to dictate to us what is best of our people and our children. Too many times we said, the province says jump, we jump. We always take that direction. Now it's your own people that are going to give you direction. In this conference, we engage the diverse experience of our teams, keeping in the forefront of our minds the common need to work together towards increased autonomy of our grassroots as beginnings. Today, you mark another milestone, and you'll be walking towards a new milestone. And when you get there, we'll all come together again. There's no boundaries in the former established communities. There's no my community, our children, our parents. It all belongs to us.
The struggles are all the same. The traumas are all the same. The situations are similar one way or another. And we're all related in that way. And now we're striving to improve those things based on our laws, our legislations, and the way we do things as Indigenous people of Turtle Island. So, having said that, we also have to think about the voice of the land. The voice of the land is in our language, And so when we're reviving and getting back on our feet from the years of colonialism and paternalistic, traumas that we've gone through, I think, we need to go back to the land and, listen to the laws there, the laws of the creators and all the animals, all the substances that we live by every day. And so those are where the answers are for us. And so I'd like to, suggest that if we're going to do future gatherings such as this, we do it on the land, When we're in the urban center, we lose one another in some way or another, and we're not really focused because of the distractions, And that's the key to, really getting into the roots of what we're doing here and how we're going to achieve the ultimate goals of protecting our children in the future in such a harsh and ever-changing society where the challenges are getting more and more tougher, I know funding is a big issue with this package, and that needs to be seriously looked at so that we don't undermine ourselves in what we're trying to achieve moving forward for our children and our communities and as a collective body.
What is jurisdiction? We were asked by Dr. Garrick. That's a good question, because sometimes I think the governments want us to think we're getting jurisdiction when we're actually not. So how do we claim jurisdiction in a way that really is something that honors our teachings? And then the third thing is kind of, we're in Ottawa, we're working on this human rights challenge, but we haven't had chances to have gatherings like this with all of you to make sure that what we're doing is on the right track, and that when we end the tribunal's jurisdiction, we do it at a time where you know what the long-term solutions are, you know how to enforce things if the government's backslip, and you know where to find us if we've screwed up. I think that those are really important things, and yet things are really unfolding quickly. So I want to just hit the tops of some of the mountains about some of these things that have happened during the pandemic, and really making a plea to say that what I'm going to say is going to feel overwhelming, and that's exactly why we need to take, as the leadership has said, the time to get it right. So let's go through this a little bit. Oops, I know. Number one, the idea of equality. And I mean equality not just what non-First Nations kids get and families get. It's actually equity. It means it's something that you get the same opportunities to succeed, where your kids aren't going to schools with black mold, where your kids aren't struggling to get health care, or families with autistic kids, they're able to get the supports that they need. That young people that are being reunited back with their communities, they have the supports and the families have the supports. Where we're not fighting for clean water, where we're not fighting for broadband access. All of that is really important to have funded at equitable levels by the federal government and off reserve by the province, because 72% of kids in care are cared for by the province off reserve. So for those of us thinking about C92, that's important because most of the kids are off reserve. And so we can't leave those kids behind, right? And all of this is important because when we talk about self-determination, often the government says, draw down your laws and we'll figure the money out later. Well, that is an old trick, because without the money, you can't have the resources to implement your authority, and that's really important.
So these are just some of the key concerns with the Act, like the C-24, the Bill C-92, National Standards and Best Interests of the Child. It sets a floor, not a ceiling. If implemented, may make a difference, but could serve to maintain the status quo. Like we were talking, this conference is focused on trying to get community input on best interests of child. And currently, the current CFS Act has minimum requirements, and that's what they said. They set a floor, but it doesn't have a ceiling. And if we just keep those same best interests of child the way they are right now, it could just mean that everything just kind of stays the same with how we're going to be defining whether a children needs care. One of the biggest things that we were talking about yesterday with in regards to best interests of child is that currently, that definition within the CFS Act as it is today actually works against our parents, because say if a foster parent was to, if we had a child in care with a foster parent and we remove that child to reunify that child with their family, the foster parent has a right to go to court and appeal that decision. And under the current best interests of child, and it's happened time and time again, the judge rules that the child is better off with the foster parent because they developed a bond. So there's not enough importance in the current law on family, on culture, on community. So that's why the best interests of child is like very important when we're beginning this process. The overall goals are to develop a CFS law, policies, procedure, and outline of practices that are reflective of the KTC communities, and to ensure that the distinct Dene and Innu nations are recognized within the legislation, and to ensure the natural laws of KTC nations are recognized, and to establish a KTC governing body.
So we have listened to the children and how they're expressing themselves, what's happening to them, communication with the youth, provide guidance, connect with their children and youth, parental involvement and programming within the community, available and accessible to all families. So we have traditional values and teachings and the language, parents bringing back the way it was, and also having the involvement with the elders in the family. Eliminating barriers for children and families, so we could do that by advocating on their behalf, so they can access the supports and resources needed. Family roles, so how they interchange.
There was talk about mentorship. Pair a family with an elder. I mean, an elder to spend time with that family when they're learning about their culture. Define this abuse and discipline. I think there's more to say about that. That we're not talking about abuse. When we're talking about discipline, we're not talking about abusing children. We're talking about providing some good values, instilling some good values within our children and within our communities and our families.
Getting to know our past to start healing from our past. And positive mentorship from elders, and bring back our ceremonies, medicine laws, language, and family involvement in planning, family group conferencing. And the last one is elders committees, elders advisory. That was our group's ideas. Thank you.
Mediation process before apprehension, maintaining family unit, provide training for families of special needs children, trauma, such as trauma center and counseling, integration when child returns to the community, keeping siblings together, transparency, holistic approach, keeping everyone in the child circle of care, cultural values, land-based training, ensure safe environment, such as keeping them from harm, keep children connected to their roots, family roots, etc., keeping our language alive with our children, bring our children home, repatriation, making communities healthier, staff accountability, leadership to enforce, consistency, and having supports in place at kids aging out of care, having an emergency shelter, no abusive language, and no put-downs.
Returning to the land, honoring the past, learning from the past teachings, respect for parents and elders, encouraging, empowering our children, foster growth, remove limitations, positive self-image, empowerment, more connections for family, maintaining the family bond, family support one another, more activities, more connections to community, more visits to communities to create bonds. I guess this is what's about more visits to communities. In some communities, when there's a crisis, that's when, talked about when workers go. They should be there before all this stuff happens in communities, like to provide service and awareness. More visits to communities. Oh, I said that already. More foster homes are needed in the communities. That way the children are not being sent out. And we need more local child care committees in our communities too.
The population on our reserves is expanding rapidly. The resource base within our reserve boundaries is not adequate to provide a living for the existing population, let alone a expanded future population. The areas around our reserves contain tremendous potential for development, particularly in forestry, fishing. However, at present, the resources in these areas can be exploited by any corporation or any person that has the capital and capability of doing so. Furthermore, these resources, which are key to our future development, can be exploited without any benefits at all going to our people, and we have seen that happen. And D, I'm almost done here. We simply will not be able to get control of this resource space by expanding our reserve boundaries. The individual reserves in this region do not have the capacity to tap the resource base and embark on a real development program. The bands make up the MIB North and Northeast regions have not developed a unified comprehensive development strategy. In fact, regarding some matters, we are competing against one another rather than uniting. Recommendations that the bands in the MIB North and Northeast region form an organization whose main function would be to formulate strategies and implement programs aimed at total development of the region in a manner designed to benefit the members of the bands in the regions.